HowExpert Stories. Real stories by everyday people. Don't Walk Through the Cemetery by Suzette Clear. I consider myself lucky to have a short commute to work. My home and job were really only separated by a small cemetery. I still commuted by car or bike every day because I was normally running late. The work I did was a true enjoyment, and I felt a true calling. Being a hospice nurse can be extremely challenging work, especially when caring for the elderly. Looking forward to a good day, I rode past the cemetery to Miss Elizabeth Mavis's home, where I cared for her mother, Martha, while her daughter went to work. It didn't escape my mind to think that my patient and friend would find her final rest at this cemetery soon. While I cared for her, I would try to delay that for as long as possible. Just over a minute late, I pulled into Mavis's home driveway. My little red VW Bug was my pride and joy, and never failed to get me to where I was going. My car may be older than I am, but it ran perfectly. I patted the hood in thanks as I ran in, walking into what appeared to be an argument. "I already told you she's fine. I give her all the best care, and she wants to stay here at home." "You expect you can do better when you haven't even bothered to visit regularly? What a joke," Elizabeth said with a sarcastic anger. Her brother Juan bristled visibly at her words. I dropped my bag on the hook on my way in, past the kitchen where they argued, straight to the living room where Martha waited for me, and I rushed to check her vitals. While I worked, I kept my head down, but was unable to block the loud discussion that ensued. "Of course I don't visit. You know my work is crazy. Besides, I know every time I come over I have to deal with your criticism on everything." "Not like that, Juan. Mom doesn't like it when you hold the spoon this way. Do it that way. And while you're at it, stop breathing so loud." "Are you serious? You're insufferable. You're suffocating Mom by being such a helicopter." "Ha!" Elizabeth retorted. "First, I don't care for her well enough. Now you say it's too much? Make up your mind, Juan. Please tell me how you can do better. Why don't you start by telling me the names of her morning meds, or even how many she takes? You can't. Just do us both a favor and leave. I'm going to be late for work, which I need to do, because Lord knows you're too cheap to help me pay for anything Mom needs anyway." Juan slammed his hand loudly on the table. "You get money for her care. Why do you need more? What are you doing with Mom's money anyway?" "Nice manicure, by the way," he finishes sarcastically. "Okay, that's enough of that," I say to Martha softly, as I lifted her head off her favorite lounge chair into her wheelchair. She is still capable of walking, but I was desperate to escape the tension. These kinds of arguments were normal in situations such as this one, but I never got used to them. I wheeled Martha outside to her garden. She used to be able to care for her rose garden on her own, but now Elizabeth and I kept it up for her, so she could still enjoy it. Her garden overlooked the entire cemetery, and centered in the middle of her darkest red roses was a large, white Virgin Mary statue, and at its base, spent candles. In keeping with Martha's ritual, I struck a match and lit a new candle so she could sit by it and pray. When I first started my job with the Mavises, Elizabeth told me her mother used to be a religious healer. A curandera. My mother had gifts, Elizabeth explained. She knew things before they happened, and healed others with her remedies and prayers. I reassured her that I would support Martha in whatever she needed, whether I agreed or not. Personally, I never understood the need for religion. As if reading my skeptical mind, Martha began. Rosary held tight in her hands, she began to whisper her prayers in Spanish. Her cognition wasn't great, but sometimes after her time in the garden, she would be able to speak in the present moment, for a while aware of her situation and everything around it. I looked forward to those moments, as brief as they were. Today, Martha didn't disappoint. Instead of asking for her daughter or telling me to trim a rose, she gripped my arm tightly. Looking at me directly and sending a chill down my spine, she said, "Don't walk through the cemetery." I pulled back, frightened. But before I could ask for clarification, Juan breezed through the back door. "Good morning, Nancy. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. My sister and I have trouble agreeing on what's best for Mom. We can agree on having you at least. I think I'll take her for a quick walk around today. The weather is beautiful." Turning his gaze at his mother, he said softly, "Would you like that, Mama? Let's go for a ride, eh, beautiful?" Martha turned to me, almost as if not aware her son was there. "Don't turn your back on God, Nancy. Turn to Him for salvation." "Not this again, Mama. Not everyone shares your faith. Come on, let's go." As Juan wheeled Martha away, I tried to shake off the unease. "Stop being silly," I said to myself. "You don't believe in this stuff." The rest of the day was uneventful. I soon forgot about what had happened that morning. At least until it was time to go home. I hopped in my car and I tried to turn it on. There was no sound. It was completely dead. Seeing that evening sun was close to setting, I quickly sent a text to Elizabeth, telling her that I would be back later for my car, and I would be walking home. She was most likely preparing Martha for bed, and I knew I wouldn't hear from her until later that night. I would have to walk through the cemetery to make it home. I was nervous at first, with Martha's premonition echoing in my thoughts. But halfway through the cemetery, I realized that I was perfectly safe. Passing an ornate chapel, I slowed my pace and hummed softly to myself. I almost didn't hear the man behind me, ordering me to keep going and not to scream. The feeling of what I guessed to be the barrel of a gun pressed into my back. "What?" I uttered in disbelief. "Face forward and keep moving. You're coming with me," he said in a deep voice. "My husband is expecting me home any minute," I lied. "If I'm not home soon, he'll call the police." He responded by digging the gun in deeper. My mind worked furiously to figure out how to escape. I knew the route forward was even more isolated. It seemed crazy to run back and further away from home, but I was also listening to what Martha had told me. Don't turn your back on God. Had she meant the chapel? Waiting until we passed a huge headstone, I ran. Startled by my sudden departure in direction, I heard the man struggle to turn and follow. I zigged and zagged my way through the headstones in an attempt to dodge any bullets that might come flying my way. Finally making it to the chapel, I pulled the heavy door open and hurried inside, looking for some way to lock it. "Can I help you, miss?" A soft-spoken man questioned me, concerned. "There's a man chasing me with a gun. He's trying to kill me," I screamed. Without a second thought, the man raced past me and ran out the door. I heard a struggle ensue outside, but thankfully, my savior was a retired officer and had no problem subduing the armed man. My biggest shock, however, was finding out who my assailant was. It was Juan. He removed the battery from my car, forcing me to walk home. He had been planning on killing me and going back to murder his sister, leaving him as the only one left to collect his mother's will, as well as the little money paid by the state to care for Martha. He confessed to the police that he would tell his mother his plan, thinking she didn't understand and would be unable to warn anyone. I'm so grateful Martha not only understood, but found a way to warn me. I owe Martha my life and have learned to trust in my old friend's wisdom until she finds her peace and rest amongst the others in the cemetery, where I almost lost my life. HowExpert publishes how-to guides and real stories by everyday people. Visit HowExpert.com to learn more.